So before this, I was in the middle of working on what's probably going to be the biggest video I will ever make. But when I saw that my girl Sawako Kuronuma was coming back after a long absence, I knew I just had to talk about it, even if it is going to be brief. So yeah, Kimi ni Todoke Season 3 was just released, and I'm kind of amazed by that. It has been 13 years since Season 2 last aired, and I, for the longest time, had resigned myself into believing that we were never going to get a continuation of this series, especially since Season 2 was so frustrating to watch. I already went over this in a previous video I did on the series, but what made Season 1 so special in my eyes was that it was primarily a coming-of-age story, and a really great one at that. Of course there is romance as well, but it plays a more secondary role to the personal journey that Sawako goes on throughout the season. Making friends, gaining acceptance, and building self-advocacy are all integral to Sawako's personal character development, and all of it is handled very organically. Furthermore, I just thought it was a really cute and wholesome show to watch. Yes, as some people has pointed out, there were some misunderstandings along the way, but they had a purpose, and that led to the series having some great and meaningful dramatic moments. So when Season 2 came along and spent about 2/3 of its duration being nothing but misunderstandings, and thus having Sawako and Kazehaya be absolutely miserable throughout its run just for the sake of having conflict, needless to say, it made it really tough to sit through. I do get what the show was trying to do. I know that stuff like this is kind of necessary in order to get to that next stage in a relationship, but compared to the season before it, the execution was kind of sloppy. However, despite it not being as great as the first season, I still think it's a pretty good season overall. It's well made, well performed, and fortunately, it did manage to salvage itself near the end by having Sawako and Kazehaya actually end up together, which I'll admit was pretty cathartic to see. But despite that, many other points were still left unaddressed by the end of the season. I know that the manga had concluded in 2017, and there was a live-action adaptation co-produced by Netflix that aired last year, and I've heard pretty decent things about that, but it's just not the same. I just want to see anime people be cute in anime. Though, speaking of Netflix, this is where we come to the present day. Since acquiring the series, they have gone to great lengths to try and promote it to as many people as possible. First, the series finally got an English dub after God knows how long it's been, which is great, and now they have commissioned a third season of the anime. Most of the original voice cast have reprised their roles, some key staff members for the first 2 seasons have returned as well, and Production IG is back to animate it, consisting of 5-hour-long episodes, which is certainly more than I or anyone else was asking for. So now that this season is finally upon us, what did I think of it? Well, let's find out. Deegwit everyone, I'm IrishAnimeFan, and this is my review of Kimi ni Todoke Season 3. This season picks up right from where the last season left off. Sawako and Kazehaya have just started dating, but now they have to navigate through these newfound feelings that they have for each other and what that means for their relationship as a whole. Meanwhile, her best friends, Ayane and Chizuru, are also figuring out their own feelings when it comes to finding love and happiness in their own lives. I might as well start with Ayane and Chizuru first because while this is ultimately Sawako's story and they do play a massive part in that, they also deserve to be treated as characters in their own right, and from what was shown in this season, the show definitely agrees with me. I'll be honest, I was never as invested in the relationship between Chizuru and Ryu as much as the main couple. I think that's because I found it to be a little superficial and a little cliche, especially with the love triangle with Ryu's brother Toru on top of it all, and their segments veered into overall melodrama at points, which definitely clashed with the grounded high school drama that it wanted to present. However, Season 3 changed that all around because it goes more in depth into why they have this connection in the first place, and the show argues why they should end up getting together. This is conveyed in episode 3 as it delves into their history together, including depicting a lengthy sequence recounting a time when they had to come to terms with an unexpected tragedy. That sequence alone was really moving, in no small part to its fantastic direction, and by the end of it I was almost in tears. So yeah, real good episode, and while there is still a lot to work on, I do think they have a bright future ahead of them. On the other hand, we as the audience never got to know that much about Ayane outside of her connections with the other characters. She positions herself as the series' voice of reason, often giving sound advice to everyone, but she never allowed herself to engage in any romantic rendezvous of her own. But again, season 3 finally shed some light on the matter. Ayane is revealed to be someone who has been burned by past relationships, and because of that, it has affected her own self-worth. That is until Kento Miura, a character who was introduced in season 2, suddenly takes an interest in her, and now she doesn't really know what to make of her own feelings. Now, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I didn't like Kento Miura at all when he was first introduced. He came across as this kind of womanizing playboy character who acted like he wanted to encourage Sawako on her journey, but it turns out that the only reason he did so was to worm his way into her life, make her fall in love with him, cause as much drama as possible, and annoy the ever-loving out of me every time he appeared on screen. Season 2 was actively made worse in my opinion because of his existence. But I could have forgiven a lot of what he did if he was actually, you know, a well-written character in that season. But he doesn't even come close to that. So when I found out that he was going to be in this season, I was very worried that the same thing might happen again. But I was quite surprised when I actually started liking him over the course of the season. This is because they rewrote his character from someone who posed as a potential rival to Kazehaya to someone who is more concerned with the well-being of others and actively wants to help, as shown in his pursuit of Ayane, not out of lust, but because he genuinely wants to be there for her. This change is not perfect by any means, but I do think it's a much better direction for his character, and if that means Ayane has more to do in this season, then I support this change. And I guess it's time to finally talk about Sawako and Kazehaya. After 2 seasons of wanting these two to get together, they are now officially a couple. But just because they are now together doesn't mean that their story ends there. After all, neither of them are the same characters that we first saw all the way back in 2009. Oh god, I feel really old after saying that. Sawako has grown significantly since her first appearance, gaining more life experience as well as confidence, which informs the decisions she makes. Conversely, Kazehaya has proved to be more than just a nice boy with a pretty face. Over the course of the series, he's actually shown to be quite stubborn and possessive over Sawako. Up until that point, the series had framed these two as polar opposites, but the closer they became, the more similar they turned out to be. This is reflected in what they both desire in a relationship. But because both of them cherish each other so much, that means they often have to tiptoe around the issues that concerns them in order not to hurt each other. But by doing that, they inadvertently make the distance between them even further than when they weren't dating, and oh god, this is kinda getting... oh no. I can see why this could be just as frustrating to watch, like what happened in season 2, but I'm more forgiving of this because their situation is much different now. A breakdown in communication has always been apparent in their relationship, but unlike in season 2 where I was annoyed by their lack of directness, I was instead rooting for them to resolve these issues. I'm trying to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible for you guys, but I will say though, when that scene in episode 5 happened, if you know you know, I'll admit, I squealed. I won't deny that. It's a moment I've been waiting so long to see, so when it finally arrived, I felt very, very happy. Even if this season wasn't great, I would still say it was worth it just for that scene alone. Though speaking of which, I still had a couple of issues with this season, albeit they're pretty minor complaints. First of all, Kurumi is barely even in this season. It's a shame because she served as a great foil to Sawako in that first season, leading to some of the series' best moments, but I have a sneaking suspicion that she's kind of already served her purpose, and seeing how she didn't have that much to contribute in season 2, it just seems like the show doesn't really know what to do with her character at this point. Also, I came into this season assuming that it was going to be the final season that would conclude the story, but apparently that isn't the case, as the anime isn't even close to the manga's ending. So if you were hoping for a complete adaptation, then this isn't it, sadly. But that being said, I'm still holding out hope that a new season will come pretty soon. At the time of writing, nothing has been confirmed yet, but considering that this series was even revived at all, and the lengths that Netflix went to in order to get more eyes on it, hopefully we'll get some confirmation on whether a new season will be on the horizon pretty soon. But as for right now, I feel pretty content with how this series turned out. Overall, I thought this was a great season, and it reminded me why I love Kimi ni Todoke in the first place. It's so precious. In terms of romance anime that makes you feel warm and fuzzy every time you watch it, I don't think it gets any better than this. I mentioned that it picks up right where season 2 left off in terms of its plot, and that is also reflected in its presentation and its aesthetic. The art style and animation looks like it came straight from the late 2000s and early 2010s, almost as if there wasn't a massive gap between seasons. In a time when more beloved anime from the past are being brought back with different studios and or staff members at the helm, which can bring a completely different vibe to the series, I've got to give credit to the production committee for making the transition from season to season, especially if you're binge watching it, as seamless as possible. Either way, I loved seeing these characters back on my screen again, and I hope we get to see more of them in the future. That does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was just a quick video I put together to tide you guys over while I continue to work on that massive video that I mentioned in the beginning. More details about it will be revealed soon, so be on the lookout for that. As always, like the video and subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future. I've been IrishAnimeFan, and until next time, Slán.